Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Public Assistance Briefing for Tropical Depression Ida. Hey, first off, before we get going, I can't tell from the registration, it does not appear like we have any private nonprofits institutions signed in. If I am wrong, can you please drop a chat message into the chat room that yes, you are a private nonprofit. So it looks like it's just school districts, some municipalities, county EMAs, some FEMA folks, some state reps, but I'm not seeing in the registration that there's any private nonprofits. So that being the case, I'm able to skip over some lengthy slides and discussion points tonight. But I want to ensure that there aren't any. We're going to go ahead and start. It's a few slides till we get to those PNP specific slides, so we'll have some time. But just wanted to check on that first before we get going. And that's what we're doing. Good evening. My name is Chris Evans. I am with Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. This is a required briefing that PEMA must do to our applicants, potential applicants. We are the administrator of the FEMA Public Assistance Program. FEMA is with us in this program as partners. There's a few of them sitting on the calls today for questions later on if needed. One off-public assistance topic for individual assistance, homeowners, FEMA registration period. November 10th is the last day for our residents that were affected by Tropical Depression Ida to register with FEMA and apply to the SBA. November 10th. As you've seen, some recent, so as you message out, if you have the ability to message your residents, if you have a meeting maybe before their public meeting or something, we will always enjoy your participation in putting the message out. Doing both, as you've seen recent messaging, registering with FEMA for the grants and applying for the SBA is the avenues for becoming whole. The good part about applying to the SBA and getting turned down, if you have no means of repaying the loan, is that you can then take that denial letter, come back to FEMA for additional programs. And that's typically those are our residents that are most needy will fall into that categories. So again, just if you can help us messaging that out. So on topic, we're going to spend about an hour and a half or so going through the program. It's a high-level informational program, so if you skipped ahead in the slides, I will agree with you. There are many there. But not to worry, I am not a slide reader. We are going to see every slide, touch every slide, hit the high points. Some have things we'll discuss in its entirety of the slide, discussion topics, and others will just breeze through because they're there as your reference. You have received the slides from your county. They're there for you to keep as a reference. They'll be available on the one set for one of the other briefs is already up on our website, the one we did for Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery counties. Information is the same, just one of the time restraints, time commitments where you're required to have a form in by time, by a certain date, which we'll talk about here shortly, is different. Other than that, the information is all the same. Again, here for your reference, some of the stuff we'll get into. You have a meeting if you're an eligible applicant with eligible work and facilities, costs. You will have a one-on-one Zoom call with us scheduled down the road a couple of weeks from now. And that is there where you will have our one-on-one attention to get into down into the weeds on your projects. What it is you had damage, what costs you had. That'll be your one-on-one time with us and with FEMA. PA process, we've done the first two. We're now on the third one, and we're going to touch on all of these tonight. Our objectives for tonight, again, we're going to touch on all of these, go over them, some high level. You're going to see reoccurring themes as we go through tonight. One of them being that this is a very participatory program. We need active participation from everybody, the applicant, FEMA, and FEMA, for this to be successful. This is, as FEMA side, we're just checking the chats here. FEMA side, it's our responsibility as the administrator to keep things moving forward, but we need your assistance along with FEMA to keep that doing. So open communication through the whole thing will make that happen. You may find as we go through this tonight, after it happens many times, it's already happened a couple of times, you will determine that or decide that due to your position at your entity, you do not have the time to commit to this process. That's fine. You may find that you're going to delegate this down to somebody within your facility to be that point of contact, to be that person that works with us day to day to capture your projects and costs. Like I said, it's already happened. I've already heard from a couple entities where they were either yesterday, today, it was delegated to them, and we're helping them through the process. So if that happens, all I ask is that that person please attend one of our next briefings. We are recording these, and we will put one of them up for your counties very shortly on our website. When that happens, we'll let the county EMA office know that, and they can message that out to everybody. We have 12 counties overall for this event. We had 3 of them designated first, Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery. Your counties were then designated, and then later on, just the other day, Dauphin and Delaware were designated. So the information is all the same, just one of the time periods where forms are required by a certain date is specific. And we'll get into that. We'll show that here in a little bit. If you have questions during the process, chat room's open. One of my guys is in there watching it. So if you have a specific question on a slide, go ahead and ask it. Greg will take care of it. If you hold it to the end, you'll probably find out we answered all of your questions through this presentation. We end up having 1 or 2 at the end of each one we've had, but that's fine. We'll take as much time as we need at the end to answer your questions. Again, we're going to touch on all of these, but you'll be having discussions with FEMA and FEMA, doing things within FEMA's portal, all on these topics here in the next few days, next weeks. But again, tonight is just to give you an idea of what's happening and leave you these slides that you have for your reference. So every declaration, FEMA states a special 4-digit number. So ours for IDA, for public assistance, is 4618. If you've been with us in the previous disasters, like Irene and Lee, we're 4025, 4030. If you were an applicant with us for COVID reimbursements, that was 4506. So this is our 4-digit that is specific for this deck. It's important to us because we currently at FEMA have 4 open declarations with FEMA going back to 2016 with many open projects still. So it helps us keep track where some of the declarations cross over counties multiple times. Of importance for you on here the last bullet, incident period. Ida came in on the 1st in the western part of the state, moved through and pretty much exited on late on the 2nd. High water was up pretty much everywhere to the 5th. So this incident period is where your damages, your costs were incurred because of Ida. You probably still have work to be completed. Maybe all of your work is completed. That's great. We'll work with those completed projects, but we'll also work with those projects that you have where it's work to be completed. That's fine. Maybe months from now, maybe up to a year from now, some of the bridges we have out till that work is done. That's fine, but that work you were doing was caused by damages during this incident period. That's very specific, is it couldn't have happened from the tornadoes last week or the flooding the other day that we saw in some areas. It had to happen during this period. So for this briefing, this is the last one we have scheduled for these 7 counties. So hopefully if you are listening in on this briefing, you have a eligible facility that we will discuss within one of these counties. If you're within one of the other counties, like you said, the information you'll see tonight on the program is the same, just one of the dates for one of the forms you have to turn in is different, and that's dependent on time frames for the other counties. That form being, that one form that has a different date than everything else, is this request for public assistance, your RPA. If you were with us in old disasters where we did this briefing in person, we handed this one-page form out to you during the briefing, and while I was talking, you were filling it in. Then we collected it up, checked it, confirmed it, and then we opened the doors and let everybody out. It's now done within FEMA's online portal. We'll get into the specifics of the portal here towards the end of the slides. Many of you were applicants during COVID and are already familiar with it, already have a username and password. That's great. You're already familiar with the portal, so that'll make this process much simpler for you. If you're new to it, you've never been in public assistance before, don't worry. You've got a FEMA project specialist assigned to you to walk you through the whole time. You'll have a FEMA person assigned also. But the first thing you'll work on in the portal, and we'll talk about this RPA a few times tonight, this will be the first document, first federal document we need to have. It's a one-pager, 2 points of contact, who the entity is, you know, your municipality, a school district, the county, sewer authority, but this form must be filled out, completed inside the portal by November 13th, 21. And you'll see this reoccurring theme a few times. There'll be a few topics tonight that are reoccurring themes. That's because after 22 federal declarations for public assistance, I've seen reoccurring themes where applicants have gotten sideways, upside down, and backwards, and that's my job to prevent that from happening. So there'll be different reoccurring themes tonight that we'll stress, that will hopefully ensure that you don't fall into those pitfalls of missing deadlines or doing things outside of the program. Being redundant with a purpose. There's a method to our madness. So what does public assistance do? It provides funding for the, and we'll get into each of these, the emergency work you did and permanent restorations. Those repairs, replacements of the damaged facilities. Good news is, this is like COVID, this is, and past flooding events, this is a 100% reimbursement of your eligible costs. 75 will come from the federal share, FEMA. The other 25 non-federal share will come from the Commonwealth. And that 25% of the state share you'll receive may be prorated depending on your, as we'll get into it later on, your eligible costs at the end compared to the federal share you may have already received. So important, we've had the designated counties. Then we need eligible applicants, having an eligible facility, doing eligible work, result of the storm, and your work you do drives the costs. And we'll stress that and talk about that a couple of times tonight here on how the work, the approved eligible work you're going to help us define ultimately determines what the costs will be. For FEMA, they have a minimum $3,320 minimum project cost. If you're sitting there thinking you're below that now, and we typically see that in fire departments, but I don't think we have any on, don't let that scare you away. Come through the process, talk with your FEMA project specialist. Let's have a conversation to make sure you have identified all potential eligible costs. So don't let that scare you away right now, please. So the first four are pretty self-explanatory, and that's all we have on tonight. We don't have any private nonprofits. We had a few on the last couple ones. I've talked to a few the last couple of days and emails back and forth, getting them up and running into the system. So we're not going to have to touch, and we didn't see anything come in the chat that was a private nonprofit on this. So we're going to be able to skip through a few slides. But if you are one of the first in the first four bullets, you are an eligible applicant. On the authority side, if you are a sewer authority that is actually a department within a municipality, then your costs will be within that municipality's claim. If you are your own separate political subdivision, your own separate taxing authority, totally separate from the municipality, you will be your own applicant. You will come in under your own name. So we're going to skip through these. So an eligible applicant has to have an eligible facility in a designated county, having damaged by the event and being your responsibility. That had a couple issues already pop up, and we see it time and time again. A bridge is co-owned by municipalities. What do we do? Best thing, as we found in previous disaster, is one of those municipalities take responsibility, do an MOU with the other municipality that you are taking responsibility, that and one municipality, and you'll take responsibility for the whole project, for design, spec, getting payments, all through the process. Something you can discuss with us later on. So like I said, the work will drive your costs. So eligible work. The FEMA program pays to return that facility that was damaged by Ida back to its pre-event condition, function, and use. I amaze myself I continue remembering those three, but that's right out of the policy. So you'll hear a couple of times tonight we'll use, for an example, the one-lane bridge that was destroyed. Or maybe some, that one-lane bridge is what we can pay to put back. There might be, you might be deviating from that, or there's other things to do with it. We'll talk about that tonight. But, or the simple analogy is, if you have a Volkswagen, you're getting a Volkswagen back after the accident. You're not going to end up with a Cadillac after the accident, unless you're willing to pay the extra costs, which we will talk about here in a little bit, where that's the case. Permits, procurement, codes and standards. Reoccurring theme tonight you'll see. Please make sure you have all permits secured prior to doing work, prior to completing work. We have applicants every now and then in disasters. We just had one from an old one back in 2018, popped up the other day. They turned in their project for closeout to FEMA, part of the things being with the permits, and they didn't have any. They never got a permit to replace a culvert pipe in a creek. So they had to go back to DEP trying to get one after the fact. And if you've ever tried doing that, you'll find out that's a very difficult thing to do and time consuming. Again, reoccurring thing you'll see pop up now and then today. So FEMA categorizes work into different categories. Under emergency and permanent, and then you can see these other categories. For you, and as you're describing work in your future meetings and working in the portal, just worry about what it is, that it's debris removal, that it's a road, it's a bridge, it's your county-owned rail trail that was damaged, things like that, the buildings. Don't worry about the categories of work. FEMA and your FEMA projects and the portal will sort that out for you. What is of importance are some dates here. So if you're doing debris removal, if it's not done, if you still have some clog under the bridge, or you still have a culvert clogged up that you haven't cleaned out yet, you have until April 8th, 2022 to complete that work, 6 months from the declaration. Probably your emergency protective measures are done. Those are things you did prior to the event to protect property, move equipment out of the flood zone, blocking off roads. Your local fire departments, pumping out basements, closing off roads, doing water rescues are all under a category B. So if you have any fire departments in your municipality that you know were out during the event or after pumping out basements, please make sure they get connected to this program. Our fire commissioner's office is going to be messaging out to them also. Again, April 8th. So your permanent work, your damaged roads, bridges, gullies, buildings, that rail trail, you have until April 8th, 2023 to complete that work, 18 months from the declaration. And this last one, Cat Z, which is administrative grant costs, that's a project we'll worry about at the end once all your other work is done, and we'll have a slide later on in the presentation to get into it more detail. So we said your work that you help us describe and work on in the portal will ultimately drive your costs. All costs must be reasonable. You can't see if there's something you're contracting it out and they know it's a FEMA federal that they try and take advantage of that. You're going to be following all of your normal procurement policies, and we'll talk about that more. You should have received documents as an attachment in the emails the county sent out that we had supplied them to get out to all of you. Your eligible costs, like I said, will be driven by the work. And that work is going to be detailed in that, as we have here, center screen, the scope of work, your approved scope of work. You, FEMA and FEMA, maybe your engineer, your roadmaster, are all going to work on deciding what is it going to take? What are the pieces of the puzzle to put your facility back to its pre-event status? And you'll see this a reoccurring theme tonight. We're going to talk about it, but there's different parts of it. So getting into more on the costs. So to fix things, you're either going to fix it in-house, your own employees, equipment, materials, or you're contracting it out. So if you are using your in-house forced account, labor, equipment, materials, next couple of slides will help you on how do you cost out those things. What's eligible for time and benefits, when isn't some time eligible, all those different things are here. So you can use this as you start pulling together the documents to meet up with us. So if you have work already completed and you know what you did, and you got timesheets and equipment logs, start pulling those things together into a pile of work you have completed. And then you're going to have another pile of work to be completed. And then within those piles, we'll help you separate it out into the categories. Because you're going to have what we're going to talk about a little later on, that project worksheet is going to be by category. We're keeping the apples in one cart, bananas in another one, oranges in another one. Basically just separating out like things. So this is just to help you start the process. Again, you'll get into more detail with us at your meetings, but just some ideas, some references on what documents you need to start pulling together. So you did work in-house, so you got the employees, you know what they were doing where, whether they're working on that collapsed bridge, if you had a clogged cross pipe in a road that clogged and blew out the road and washed out a section and you had to do an emergency repair, or you've already done the emergency repairs, but you used your employees. That employee was probably using a piece of equipment you own. The loader, backhoe, gradall, dump trucks, sweepers, all of those items are listed within FEMA's equipment rates. It gives a rate based on the type of equipment it is, its horsepower, carrying capacity, bucket size, which is an all-inclusive rate. So you don't have to worry about fuel tickets or any of that. That FEMA equipment rate will help you cost out that equipment that your employee is on. You'll have it documented out that Bob was on this piece of equipment, he worked for 8 hours and the piece of equipment for 8 hours. Rental. If you rented equipment to do work, or you're going to rent equipment to do work, it does not use the FEMA equipment rate on rental equipment. You will use the rental cost. You're going to rent it for 4 days to do work A, B, and C. It'll be the rental cost and the fuel, just like you're responsible for, and also the operator. Did you have an in-house operator or a contracted operator? That'll all be documented. And then the materials you're going to use to make those repairs. May have already done some repairs. You had materials in the yard. You had that road blowout to make an emergency repair. You took 4 loads of 2A modified out in your dump truck and dumped it in the hole, graded it out, packed it, compacted it down. That is eligible. We're going to cost it at the cost to replace it. So what did those 4 loads of 2A modified cost to be replaced? Any materials you use for work to be completed. You've got some pipes to replace, some road patching to do, whatever materials are going to be used that are eligible for eligible work, to eligible damages, you're going to cost them out to us also. Okay, that's it on the eligibility. Pretty simple, straightforward. Again, high-level information, stuff here for your reference. More help, more discussions to come down the road with you on it. So, like any other grant, there's forms involved. These are our administrative forms. As the header says, we can't do anything until these are all completed. The main one is, again, the RPA. If that's not done by the 13th, you don't get into the meetings with FEMA. We don't do projects with you. Mutually exclusive operations is we need our PEMA, Pennsylvania Emergency Management State grant forms. And there's 3 of them here. 2 of them listed on this page, 1 on the next one, the PEMA DAP1. This is where you're, as a municipality, through resolution in your next meeting, hopefully November, you can get on that agenda. We're all aware we've missed October's. What you have in November, if you need to go into December, that's still going to be okay too for the DAP1. But we need, as municipalities typically have to, by resolution, appoint, designate one person who has the authority to speak for and sign documents for your entity. It could be that person we see is different sometimes than the names on the RPA. RPA names, a primary and alternate, could be the ones that are going to actually work with us day to day, the secretary and roadmaster, but the township manager, borough mayor may opt to be the agent. That's fine too. School districts, fire departments, authorities, Typically, their president, director has the authority to designate that one. They don't need to take it to a governing body for a resolution. So after that agent is appointed, they're going to fill out, sign, and complete our agreement for financial assistance, basically our grant agreement with us, the legal contract. We have the pages listed here that need attention with information. If you were with us in the past, this is the one that required the original ink signature page sent to us, which means you were mailing these forms to us, which was the only way of getting us an original ink document. We've entered the 21st century here at PEMA, and we now have e-signatures, electronic signatures on our fillable PDF forms for both the agent and the witness. You can still sign them if you wish, but we don't need the original back anymore. So you're going to fill in the DAP, appoint the agent's going to fill in the DAP 2, and then you're also going to supply us your bank account verification. All payments are electronic transfers. There's no more checks in the mail. We don't get to stand behind that adage when you call and ask, where is your money? We're saying that the check's in the mail. It's electronic transfer, which you'll get notice of. But these 3 forms, obviously you can't have a project without an RPA, but once your project is in and approved by FEMA, FEMA has transferred the funds to us to get to you. If we don't have the DAP 1, DAP 2, and bank account verification form in here completed and executed at PEMA, we can't pay you. And if you're with us in COVID for the briefings, you heard me say that undoubtedly we will have people who do their projects, get them approved by FEMA, get them funded, we'll have the funds here, and we won't be able to pay them. And that happened to about 12 applicants. A couple of them substantial 6-figure amounts of money here to reimburse them on their costs, but we couldn't as soon as we had the funds available because we didn't have a bank account information on them. So we spent time, had to stop working with others and go chase them down to get these documents. So we're hoping to break that cycle this time, that everybody has these in. They're available on our website, and I have them all loaded up in an email. I was going to blast them off, all these forms with examples, to the county coordinators this evening, but I'm holding that email till the morning. So probably tomorrow late morning, early afternoon, the county should be getting it out to all the applicants that they have on their distribution list, and that would be those that reported damages after the event. Those that got the emails previously. If you got the email with all the attachments, you've got the email with the documents on how to register for this, then you are on the county's distribution list. Debris removal. You had it in the creek, clogging the pipe, clogging the bridge. That water backed up, washed a bunch of crud up over your roads. You had your residents with flood debris starting to pile up, so you put dumpsters out in neighborhoods. Had a contractor come in and put out dumpsters to collect the flood debris coming out of the first and second floors. Or you had the residents that took it upon themselves to take all that debris and the sheetrock they cut off and put it out at the curb. It's now sitting in the public right-of-way. You, as the municipality, being in charge of safety for your community, took responsibility of that debris that's now in the public right-of-way to get rid of it in order to protect the health and safety of your public. All good things, all eligible debris, stuff we can pay for as long as it was generated by the event. But we are going to know that, like the dumpsters and the stuff on the curb, that it was monitored, and you can attest that it was flood debris, that we didn't get into late summer cleaning out of the house, that it was only flood-related debris. You're going to be able to know quantities, so if you had dumpsters or a contractor picking up from the curb, you got the tick the tip scales from the dump. I'm guessing they probably took it to the land transfer station. So we'll need to know quantities. We'll need to know where did it come from, determine the eligibility, where was it taken. You know, if you cleaned out the crud from underneath the bridge, along the roads, where did all that crud go to? You know, maybe just light mud, it was just pushed off with the brush to the side, but if you had large quantities of stone and woody debris, where was it taken to? And did you have any permits, need any permits to remove those debris deposits? And probably did if you had stream. If you had having to get equipment into the stream, you probably needed a permit, unless for the last bullet, which we'll get to. We can take care of stream debris as long as it is a threat to improved property. We can't get into, FEMA cannot get into general dredging stream of creeks. What we can take care of is, you know, within 50 feet, upstream, downstream, or if you have a log jam in back of a bunch of houses, and if you didn't get rid of that log jam, the next rain was going to flood out those houses, those type of things we can get into in your stream debris. Gravel bars, if they weren't there, none of it was there prior to the event and now deposited around some sort of improved property, we can look at those eligible costs. If you have those pipes, culvert pipes that always have water running through them, normal flow, your bridges, box culverts, when you built them, when you put them in, as long as you got a permit from DEP to do that, that permit allows you to maintain the opening of that structure, the waterway. It's 50 feet above the structure, through the structure, and 50 foot downstream of the structure. That's already in that permit. You're going out, and that is the eligible, typically the eligible footprint for debris in this program. If you're going outside of that 50 foot, it needs to be for a reason, and we saw it in many cases where maybe that gravel bar is 70 feet. And if you only take out 50, that other 20 is going to come down in the next event. So that makes sense to be able to take care of it. Again, having the pictures if you've already done it, or site inspections in the future if you haven't done it. Root balls. A few places I was at, talked with some of you, you had big root balls, those sycamore trees laying out in the middle of the creek. Next big rain could pick it up and bring it down and slam it into the bridge. Those are type of things that we want to look at getting rid of in this event, as long as it's somewhere in the area of improved property where there's an immediate threat. Things we can talk about some more at your meeting. If you've already done it, we'll have the documentation, we'll discuss it. Slides a little more on woody debris here for your reference. Projects, heard mentioned a couple of times of your scope of work and all. So by category of work, you're going to have project worksheets written. They are now called, they used to be called project worksheets in the old days. Now they are project application within the grants portal. Same type of document describing by category of work what broke, what was deposited, when, where, why, and how. This is where we'll start grouping again by those categories of apples and apples, oranges and oranges. You may end up with 3 or 4 of these. One for your debris, one for your roads and bridges. You might have 3 or 4 for your roads and bridges, depending on work completed, work to be completed, and how many you have. Might have had some building damage. That would be another category, another project. So you could see multiple. If all you had was some road damage, some scouring, you might just have one. Again, something we'll get into later with you. But this is something you or your designee will work actively with PEMA and FEMA within the portal to get it written correctly, get the proper documents in there to back up this claim, and again, developing this project scope of work. That is, again, the scope of work within the project worksheet will detail the pieces of the puzzle to put that facility back together again. And you'll see, again, the scope of work drives your costs, and you'll see this as a reoccurring theme throughout the rest of the presentation on the importance that we follow the scope of work and we talk about any changes. A little more on the scope of work, what it entails. You can see we've highlighted for you that once, again, what's great about the portal is you get to see everything going on. Your project specialist with FEMA gets to see anything, your FEMA people get to see everything, so there's nothing hidden through the process. So as you three work together and you come up with and finalize this scope of work, that's what's going to go into your final approval and fund your project. Again, the work drives the costs. Once it's final approved, that's what you must follow. Any changes must be done in writing from FEMA. If you do work outside of the project scope of work, we're not going to be able to fund those things. And we'll talk about those, where that could happen here in a little bit. More again, project is gospel. Last bullet, that's where we see, if you don't have an engineer involved at the beginning, he comes in later on after you've worked on the scope of work. He starts doing bid specs for it and doesn't like the way something reads, and he changes it on you unbeknownst to you. It goes out to bid. That's what the contractor does. Your costs are higher then, and we go and compare the scope of work to the bid specs later on, finding out that they're different. That's going to create an issue. So again, something to keep an eye on, work with us. Contracting. You're going to contract out the repairs, the replacement. Like I said, you're either doing work by in-house force account or by contract. So a little bit of info on contractors. Again, how did you procure them? Did you follow your normal bidding procurement process for your entity? Second to last bullet, although this is a federal grant, Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wage does not apply. That's straight from FEMA's policy. If you have an engineer getting ready to put it out to bid, asks about that, because it is a federal contract and he needs a document to prove it, just print him this page. We've already done it for a few applicants, and or just given them an email from me on it. But Davis-Bacon does not apply. So you're using the engineer also, create the bid specs, design, supervise the project, and do the final inspection like the subsets in the last bullet. That's fine. Again, making sure they're aware of the scope of work. Maybe they're going to work with us. Maybe they're already working on that design and spec for your project. Great, let's bring that to the meeting. Let's see if we can incorporate that as your scope of work, as long as it's just putting the facility back to the way it was. If there's deviation from it, then we'll work with you and see what we can take care of, what we can't, things we'll talk about here in a little bit. But for having, again, last bullet, engineers are used to doing this. This is how they keep the billing for you anyways, but this is how they need to bill you, invoice you, is based on these three subsets of work. Okay, some things we can't do. Again, getting outside of that proved work. We talked about that one-lane bridge you have. You may be thinking, because of its condition prior to the event, or maybe you got a housing development going in up the road, you really could use a two-lane bridge there. We can only pay to put the one-lane bridge back. Still make sense for you to put in a two-lane, and you can, but you're going to have to pay. We're going to have to prorate the costs of the lanes. You will have to pick up the cost of that second lane. We cannot. Something to talk about at our meeting, if that's something you're looking. Again, these are all some teasers for you, things to think about, things that we will bring up at the meetings with you. And then some other things that we cannot pay for. So your project worksheet, that's the document, documents what broke, we just talked about, has the scope of work. That work is going to drive the cost. Your cost is either going to be below $132,800 or above $132,800. This is just another category FEMA uses for projects by calling them either small or large. We understand all of the work. It's not minimizing the importance of the work that's needed. It's just another way of categorizing work like we did with A through G, keeping things separate. But more important here, details how quickly we can pay you, quicker under smalls than large, and what kind of documents you're going to need at the end. Probably less documents in a small compared to the amount of documents detailing a large, which we'll get into. So on smalls, during this price range, again, don't let that $33.20 scare you off. But this will be by project. So it could be very well you have 4 small projects and a large. Again, something we'll get into when we sit down with you. But everything is to document your work and then to eventually document the actual cost for each project. On smalls, those that are under the $132,800 of importance too is how quickly we can get you the federal funds. We're saying this is a 75-25 split. For small projects, we are required by the program to get you, after the project is approved, obligated, and the funds are available to us at FEMA, we are obligated to get you the federal share of small projects as soon as possible. And for us, that runs about 3 weeks. From the time that the project's approved, we have to wait a few days after that till FEMA actually obligates it. You'll see the approval, final approval in the portal, but then it takes a few days for it to be obligated by FEMA. Takes a few days for those funds then to become available to the Commonwealth. Takes a couple of days for that document then that we need authorizing us to make that payment to get to us. And then we have to invoice our comptroller's office. Once it's invoiced, you'll receive a letter from us saying that all these things have happened. You have a project approved, this is the project and the amount, and we have invoiced you. And here's the invoice information. It'll be about 10 to 14 business days from that letter of invoicing till you see that 75% federal share show up in your bank account. The other 25% non-federal share the Commonwealth is putting up, we hold here until all work is completed, all your bills are paid, and we determine what your final eligible amount is. We don't want to be transferring money to you that then potentially you would have to be transferring back to us because cost came in cheaper, work you didn't complete. So we hold that Commonwealth share. So yes, that means you're going to be into the project for 25% until we get the final completion report from you. What will also happen on projects over $70,000 is we're going to be, like all of them though, is we're going to be taking care of what you actually spent on that project. So that you don't get in trouble with your auditors if you're subject to a single audit. And if we don't get in trouble with the Commonwealth, you cannot be making money off of the Commonwealth share. And that would come into play with let's use a $100,000 project for an example. 75% of that is federal share. We're going to get to you right away, $75,000. Now, we wrote that project based on an estimate. You have work to be completed. So we estimated with you or with your engineers what we thought that project was going to cost you. And we estimated it at 100. So we give you 75 as soon as possible after getting it. And you go out, spends a couple months, get it out bid, and you do the work, or you do the work in-house, And after a while, lo and behold, it only ends up costing you $80,000 to do that work. Well, you've already received $75,000 from FEMA, so you only need $5,000 or 5% from us. If we were to give you the full state 25%, you'd be making $15,000. So we can't have that happening. Again, things we will work with you as they come in. In that same project, for $100,000, you get the FEMA $75,000, and it costs you less than that $75,000. FEMA allows you to keep that underrun. You get to, we'll have conversation with you as to what you can do with that. It's supposed to go towards something to better your community. Maybe some more riprap, maybe add some more stone, shot rock in the shoulders, where you might have some elevation, some slope, things we can do to protect things from the future. Again, we'll get into particulars case-by-case basis. For the projects 132,800, they're deemed a large project. That's going to be your big bridges, your big culverts, maybe long stretches of roads, or we may group 3 or 4 sites together. Individually, they're small, but once we group them all together on a project, it now becomes a large. Funding, again, those happen the same way. Project will be written, approved in the system. Same letters will be generated once we have the money available to us. The only difference with a large project is we are not going to send you the federal share right away, as soon as possible. That federal share, as our letter will detail to you, is now available for you to draw down. As you incur costs on that project, as you get invoiced, so it may be on a large project where you're using an engineer, after he does that design spec, he's going to bill you for it. So in increments of $10,000, you can start working with your project specialist to draw down, your PEMA project specialist, to draw down funds as you cost or incur. Again, once we get that information we need from you, which is that DAP 9, that form will come with the letter. It'll also explain it, and then you'll work with your PEMA project specialist. But once we receive that DAP 9 and a copy of the invoice, we'll get it over to our administrative side and get that invoice to you. So hopefully within a couple of weeks of you sending it to us, is we're going to get that transfer done to you. There's other reports and requirements on large projects, and as those come into play with you, your project specialists will be in touch. For large projects, it may be estimated to replace that 1-lane bridge, maybe an estimate of $200,000. We work through the process with you and your engineer, but once you put it out to bid, your final cost and you do all the work may come in under that $200,000, may only be $180,000. That's what you'll end up getting, and we'll determine that at the end by a final inspection review. Once you tell your project specialist that the work is done, we're going to do a site inspection with FEMA. We're going to collect up any documents we need supporting your claim costs that we don't already have and put it into FEMA for final review. They'll go through, dot the I's, cross the T's, add a couple of commas, and determine what your final eligible reimbursement is for that project. Maybe higher, maybe lower. And we'll talk about if that, if that we've estimated at 200 and your bids come in higher, that would be an overrun, or any overrun over 10%. You want to get with your PEMA project specialist to talk about it. We're going to look at the bid specs, the scope, and if with FEMA we determine that, yes, you took that $200,000 project, you put it out to bid, and your lowest bid that you're accepting is greater than 10% of the PW value. We can then look at getting those additional funds for large projects approved for you so they're there for you to draw. Something new coming into play in this declaration for applicants are the second and third bullet. We've had lots of conversations with FEMA and headquarters and financial people that this just does not pass the common sense test for the program, but it's a federal requirement for federal grants on advanced funds. Unfortunately, it affects us also. So advancing funds, and the only place we will be advancing you funds are on your small projects where the work is written based on work to be completed based on an estimate. So even when that happens, where you haven't started work yet, maybe a couple months to get going on that particular project, if you remember on the small projects, once that project is in, approved, and funded, I have to advance you the funds as soon as possible. So that means I'm going to be sending you the federal share on that project. That's considered advancement. There are no incurred costs, isn't already. If you think on work completed, that's a reimbursement. Where we talked on the DAP 9 on the large projects, that's a cost incurred. You're giving us an invoice for those costs. It's not an advancement. So where that is the case, those advanced funds by bullet 3 have to be turned into a interest-bearing account, second bullet, and then any interest over 500 must be returned that you receive in a year must be returned to FEMA. Again, things we can get into with your project as it happens, but I'm pretty sure the funds you're going to have aren't going to make over 500 in interest. Management costs. So this is a good news slide. It's a surprise slide for you. We talked about it was that Cat Z back in those categories. So FEMA has a provision that you can recoup your management administrative costs, time spent managing the project at your end. If you're going to keep a simple spreadsheet, again, we'll talk about it more at your meeting, but a simple spreadsheet of who did what, when, and why in managing and administrating this grant. It's not, if you're also the roadmaster, it's not your time out grading the road. That's time will be captured in your project worksheet. This is your time managing. So most likely your first entry on the spreadsheet are going to be the 2 hours for tonight. This is a management administrative function eligible for reimbursement. If you are a paid employee at your entity at your hourly rate, you're going to enter that on your spreadsheet. Your name on this date and time, function, project management function would be applicant's briefing, 2 hours at your rate. And you'll keep that throughout this whole program, doing all your project work. Like I said, we will then at the end, once all of your other projects are closed out, your project specialist then will work with you on getting this spreadsheet, because you're not going to have any more work to do. So we'll get your spreadsheet detailing all of your management administrative costs for this program and get that project written, obligated, and funded to you, and then we'll close you out totally. So tonight's meeting, your future calls with us and FEMA, the first meetings you have, this recovery scoping meeting, which is your first meeting with FEMA and us, your one-on-one, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. All those things, gathering up the documents, putting them in the piles of work completed, work to be completed, things like that. All projects go through special considerations. So all these items we looked at to see if they're relevant to each of your projects. Is your structure that was damaged greater than 50 years old and have any historic significance? required for its repair? Do we want to do any mitigation, which we'll talk about here in a little bit? Insurance. Is it a structure that was insured or not? Should it have been insured or not? And then, as always, the codes and standards. Updated link for the Endangered Species Act, your snail darters, and bog turtles. Hey, hazard mitigation. Under the Public Assistance Program, this isn't the mitigation you may have been involved in where we buy out flooded homes that have been repeatedly flooded. We give you a theme of the funds to buy that house and you demolish it and turn it into green space forever. This mitigation is used to harden, to mitigate against future damages to that structure that was damaged in this event. I'll have a couple examples here coming up. So it's not taking it from a Volkswagen to a Cadillac. You're still repairing it to its function, but we're adding something. We're doing something that can protect it from future damage. Many examples are the cross pipes on our roads. You have the cross pipe that conveys rainwater from one side of the road, one catch basins to the other. When it's raining, that pipe is wet. When it's not raining, that pipe is dry. It has no standard flow. Those are our cross pipes. They get clogged up many times. When they get clogged up, then the water runs over the road, washes out the road, maybe the embankment, and we have other damages. So in cases where the pipe hasn't been replaced yet, we can look at upsizing that pipe, and typically they're 18 inches. So we can look at upsizing them to a 24, as long as there's not a substantial change in the roadbed. Riprap, larger riprap. You had shock rock in your shoulders. You have a steep road coming down. You had some shock rock in there. That's still all washed out the shoulders. Maybe we add in bigger rock. That one-lane bridge that was destroyed. It got destroyed because the creek got in behind the wing walls, washed out the abutments, and dropped the deck into the creek. You didn't have any riprap there in front of the wing walls. Maybe this time putting it back in, we're going to add riprap in front of the wing walls. Maybe you didn't even have wing walls. Maybe we got to look at that. All things we can look at under mitigation. Again, things to think about. Important program with us and FEMA. So it will be talked about at your scoping meeting to see where we may be able to add mitigation funds. This is in addition to the cost of repairing it. This is additional funds we can add to the project to protect it maybe for the next time. Insurance. So if you have a structure, if you participated in the damage assessment process, reporting your damages, you kind enough to show us around for an afternoon. We came to visit during the joint assessment. If you had a building or equipment damage, we talked about insurance. Were you covered or not? All applicants are required, once you're into the portal, one of the documents you're required to upload to FEMA is all insurance you have, whether it's a standard insurance policy, if you have a flood insurance policy, great, and any riders and or excess secondary market insurances. FEMA insurance specialist is going to look at that to make sure that there is no insurance available to you, or that if there is, under a flood insurance policy, that you have received all possible proceeds. We have seen in the past where applicants were shorted, and the FEMA insurance specialist was able to point that out to your agent, to their agent. So it's something, again, we can't duplicate funds. If you have some sort of insurance already available to you, you must report it, and it may end up, in some cases, just a deductible. that you had full coverage for whatever was damaged under a flood insurance policy. That's great. That's what it's for. But you had a $5,000, $10,000 deductible. Then that ultimately will be the eligible costs reimbursed to you is that deductible. Must obtain and maintain, second to last bullet. So if you have a structure, equipment that was damaged that was not in the flood zone, so you did not have flood insurance, FEMA will pay for the repairs, replacements of that structure, but they're going to require you, in addition, to go out and obtain flood insurance equal to the value of your damage. You may want to go and get more than that, depending on what you're insuring, but you will need to go get flood insurance. So as I've heard before, wait a minute, I already tried getting flood insurance. My agent told me I'm not in the floodplain. I can't get flood insurance. I don't need flood insurance. I'm not in the floodplain. Both of those are false. Anybody, anywheres can get flood insurance. We heard it a lot from homeowners being told that by their agent, that they can't get it because they're not in the floodplain, or don't worry about it, you're not in the floodplain, you don't need it. Both, as we've seen, is false in these. It's false about the floodplain, but as we've seen in these past storms, these last couple of years, there's been a lot of overland flooding due to the amount of rain we received. So another message you can help us put out with your residents is everybody can have flood insurance. For FEMA, though, we're going to make you go get it for the next time. If you are in the floodplain, your structure or equipment that were damaged by the Ida, if it is in the 100-year floodplain, the special flood hazard area, you should have had flood insurance. If you did not, FEMA is going to treat your project as if you did and deduct from your costs any possible NFIP coverage you could have had you had flood insurance. Again, there's a few nuances with it. We'll get into the more details with you if that pertains to you. But hopefully if you were in the flood zone, floodplain, you had insurance. So as we talked about, we put things back the way it was. And as I've said before, there's some nuances to that, some exceptions. We already talked about, though, that you can't take a one-lane bridge and pay for a two-lane bridge. You may be choosing to do that. You may be choosing then to pay for that extra lane because it's certainly paying for one lane is cheaper than the whole thing that you may have been looking at having to do. But we call that an improved project. As long as you're willing and able to pay that extra cost to go from a Volkswagen to a Cadillac, we will write that within the project. And we call that an improved project. Again, things to think about for the future meeting. But going back to that one-lane bridge again. Yeah, it was old. It was still functional. It's kind of questionable, but, you know, there wasn't any weight limit signs up on it. But it was showing its age. You're thinking about, you know, we might need to replace it? Do we want to replace it? You know, our neighbor municipality has a nice two-lane bridge just downstream. PennDOT's got a nice four-lane bridge upstream. Not a whole lot of people go over that bridge. And, you know, it's a pain anyways because it gets big dog leg approaches into it. It's got a big hump in it. So not a lot of people are using it. So it was kind of a gift from Mother Nature that it's been washed out. Do you have to repair it? Do you have to replace it? No, you do not. You can choose to take an alternate project. We still have to make sure the site's secure, that nobody's going to drive through that opening, that the bridge deck isn't still out in the waterway causing problems. But you will work with us and your engineer and still cost out the price of replacing that one-lane bridge back to the way it was. So we'll go through that whole process of putting that puzzle together, come up with the work required, get the cost for it. You can then take those funds and do something else to better your community. Things we'll talk to you about it if it falls into it. We've already had a few talking to us. Some examples here at the bottom, what we've done in the past. You can't use it for payroll or expenses. Again, things that, maybe a new tractor, cut the grass. You're going to be doing maybe you're looking at doing a bunch of housing buyouts under the mitigation with Tom Hughes. So you're going to have a whole big section of new open space. So you're going to need a new tractor for it. Maybe a municipal building needs a new roof, or much to the secretary's enjoyment, doesn't have air conditioning, so now you want to put in air conditioning. Oh, I see we got somebody popped in now, late sometime or other day. Okay, well, from the Philadelphia City Rowing, we'll have to get back. We'll have to touch base with you here at some point. You're with the city, you may be a city department, but we can touch base with you here at the end. Again, alternate project, something to think about if it's pertinent to you, and we can talk about it at your scoping meeting. A couple of slides on codes and standards must be in effect adopted prior to the event. One of the big questions always comes up is PennDOT design manual. Whenever you use their liquid fuels money to repair your roads, you have to follow the PennDOT design manual. There are no liquid fuels money being used in this, so you are not required to follow their design manual. If you have formally adopted that prior to the event, then yes, we can follow that for you, but that's very rare. I've only seen a couple of circumstances. But if you have a code and standard for repairs and replacements in place, adopted prior to the event, we can follow that. One will already be doing with you if you have bridges and culverts that you're replacing. In the permitting, in the design, your engineer is going to be doing that hydrology report to get permit from DEP. That hydrology report is going to determine what is the minimum opening of that structure. As we find many times in Pennsylvania, that structure was undersized. That 36-inch squash pipe that was in there is well undersized after the hydrology report. FEMA will participate in making that structure bigger, whatever is required to meet the minimum opening required by that hydrology report in your permitting process. Just a software process program now where they plug in and it'll spit out for you what the minimum opening for that structure should be. Again, things working with your engineer, things we'll be discussing with you during your briefing, during your scoping meeting. A couple other slides on codes and standards are also new from FEMA. Is this consensus-based codes and standards. You have a couple of documents in those PDFs, attachments that came from the county. 2 slides here, but these are, the first highlight though is they have put the responsibility on you, the applicant, with your engineer probably, to identify all applicable codes, specs, and standards required to repair or replace that structure, that facility damaged by the event. So maybe the hydrology is definitely one of them, if you're replacing a pipe, and any other one. Again, some documentation there with you. Another slide on it, though, in here for your reference. Procurement, we've talked about it a few times. The federal grant must follow CFR 200. You have documents on procurement in those attachments. In the Commonwealth, we have seen, working within this program for a few years, following your normal procurement process for your entity will be, with one caveat, will be suffice. That our standards here in procurement meet the federal. The only place we see where we don't typically have verbiage on it that FEMA needs out of the federal is that in your advertising for bids, you must be encouraging minority and women-owned businesses, small businesses, that potentially could bid for whatever it is you're bidding, that you are focusing on getting them to submit bids. Other than that, your normal procurement. Question came up, well, my local, my municipality, we gave an emergency declaration back in Ida, so our emergency declaration absolved us of a normal procurement. Probably not anymore. One, that declaration is probably expired. Two, being permanent work and not emergency in nature probably also precludes you using that. Another question came up about the state proclamation, the governors. Being a Commonwealth, our proclamation does not give relief to local governments and their procurement. It only gives relief to state governments and the things that it can do in contracting and in doing emergency resourcing that the counties may need for the unmet needs. So again, following the documents we gave you, there's more information available if you do a web search under FEMA PDAT, Procurement Disaster Assistance Training. You'll find more resources on that. Grant closeout. Every grant, all projects must be closed out. You got 60 days after you complete the work to notify us and do the grant closeout process. Not too difficult. You're going to keep the documents. A lot of documents are already going to be in the portal we need. Again, we're going to work with your project specialists on that, whether it's a large or small, but then also getting the grant closed out, the project is going to get you that 25% or whatever percent federal share you need to be made whole. A couple other things on the program. Some timelines, codes and standards again. Again, the written approval of any changes to that scope. Insurance is a player. Quicker you get the projects done, quicker we can get you the money. So if you're looking at projects, that's why we need them. Those that you have work completed are going to be really easy to get in through the system versus spending the time to estimate and scope things out. So yes, if you are doing work, you got work done, great. If you're still doing work, keep going. Don't stop. Drive on. Make sure you're following the rules that you're seeing tonight. So if you haven't gotten a permit yet, please go get it. Following all the other rules, taking pictures, keeping documents, all those things we'll need from you once we catch up with you down the way. So keep moving forward on your projects. Don't hold things up. If you've been waiting to get going, now you have enough information to get going. If there's a particular question you have, we can do it at the end, or shortly you're going to see the slides at the end of who your PEMA project specialist. Maybe you already peeked ahead to the slide, but there is one at the end by county, who here at PEMA will be your go-to person. So that's it on the program. We're now going to talk about the portal. Then there's some reminder slides, and we'll be done. We're over 3/4 of the way, so thank you for hanging in there with me. In the home stretch, turning the corner. So the portal, again, it's an online system. You must have a good internet connection to use it. Back with COVID, we had one applicant out in the central northern county that had very slow internet access, and we had to do a workaround with FEMA and some hot spots so that she had good internet access for the portal. Hoping it's not a problem for any of you, but if it turns out to be, if you find that in the next couple of days as you're moving in, you're going to say very soon you're going to get the links to the portal where you got slides on how to get in there, what to do, text boxes, click here, click there. You may have already seen them if you skipped ahead on the slides. But if you find you're having internet issues, get a hold of your project specialist. One thing though, and if you do have, ensure you are using Firefox, Google Chrome, or Edge. Works best in Google Chrome. Does not work well at all at Internet Explorer. So if you still have your web browser defaulting to Internet Explorer, that's going to need to change, or you're going to need to plug in the address to Google Chrome. Please respond, please respond. Can you please confirm where, okay, so there is a set of the slides that we did for Bucks out on our website. So the dates are a little different, but you should have received them from your county. If you reported your damages to the county, if you participated in the damage assessment to get this declaration, they had your contact information. So you should have gotten the slides and all. If you did not participate in this presentation, the county probably doesn't know you have damages, that you exist, so you need to contact your county emergency management office. One, report your damages, as you should in any future event, and two, they can get you the resources, the slides. Okay, so the portal. If you were with us, like I said earlier, if you were with us with COVID reimbursement, you're already well-versed, well aware, have a username, have a password. The slides are here for you to go ahead and get in there and move towards the RPA. Your profile is already established, contacts, things like that. If you are brand new, we have slides here for you now on the portal. It's not something to be scared of. Turns out to be pretty simple to use and very well received. So this is the link that you're going to put into either Chrome, Edge, or Firefox to get to the FEMA portal. We have some pages here for you to reference. So some of them I'm just going to click through for now, but you have them there for your reference. Or you can contact your county and get them. But again, if you're getting the ones off our website that are there now, the dates are specific for Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester. We'll get ours up here shortly for these. So you need to establish that account. So you follow that link, this will be the page, what it looks like when you get there. So if it doesn't look like this, you might be in neo.gov, you might be in one of the other federal grants websites. Make sure you're using the FEMA grants portal link we have provided that you get to this site. As you can see, we got the text box for the first time user, where to click. Got some links here to some trainings for you. These I'm just going to click through. You have them. Man, my guys are good being able to do this. I was impressed when they came to me with, look what we can do and show them. So for the new folks, if you have not already established a portal, if you do not have a username or password, you're going in there for the first time, as you're moving towards the RPA, you're going to get this, do you wish to submit an RPA? Yes, I know, this is counterintuitive by clicking no this first time, but you need to do that. We found at the beginning of this new applicants, there's a glitch in there in the portal. All they were able to see when they clicked yes was the COVID information, and you do not want that. So click no, continue on, then you'll get to where the drop down is under IDA. Once you're in, established, you have access, again, there's a tab for resources, plenty of good stuff. This is where the FEMA equipment rates is at for you to use to price out your in-house equipment, owned equipment. You have the Applicant's Grant Portal User Manual, very lengthy document, lots of information on the different parts of it. We'll have some future trainings on projects and all. The usefulness we found of the Grants Portal is it's great for those nights of insomnia. Go ahead, pop open the manual, see if by chance you bet you're not going to get through 3 or 4 pages of it. Found it very useful for that. So we've talked to the FEMA project specialist, their slide's coming up, but you're also going to have a FEMA program delivery manager assigned to you. Once your RPA is in and approved, this delivery manager or customer service manager from FEMA will be assigned to you to also help you through the process. You're going to have a FEMA and you're going to have a FEMA helping you throughout any issues, helping you get all your projects, everything into the portal. That'll be someone that'll be calling you with FEMA in the near future to do an exploratory call as the second bullet here at the top in the recovery scoping meeting. Exploratory call is just a really high level, who did what when. I think we have actually the slide. Yes, okay. Don't get ahead of the slides, Chris. Stay on the slides. So you have your program delivery manager. You may need a FEMA site inspector. If you have work to be completed, work not done, debris pile, roads, whatever, during your scoping meeting, that'll be discussed, and then you'll have a site inspector call you to set up a site visit with you. They're not going to cold call. They're just not going to show up at your door unannounced. They are going to call you, email, and set up a mutually agreed upon date and time. Again, it's on your schedule, sooner the better, to get that site inspection done. They're going to capture documents that are needed to put that puzzle together for you. Okay, so the exploratory call. Again, high level, program delivery manager and FEMA, going over trying to get a general idea on the types of projects, those categories you're going to have. The real reason is we want to see, is there anything special, anything out of the ordinary, anything unique about the project you're going to have that's going to require another specialist, a subject matter expert on what it is you're doing. You know, somebody that needs to be at your recovery scoping meeting, so when we're talking about your project, they're there, that technical specialist is there, understanding what's going on. In the old days, we called this the kickoff meeting. Again, it's your first official meeting with FEMA and PEMA. It's where we're going to start getting into, it's your one-on-one with you. We're going to start getting into the nuts and bolts of that puzzle. Things to bring, things we're going to be talking about. Again, we're talking about getting that work, types of work and all that stuff together in piles. You're going to be talking about it at the meeting, but it's basically called your damaged inventory. By now, I would guess, all applicants, everybody coming to this program know what damages, what costs they had incurred because of IDA. What out of the ordinary costs did they incur? What damages happened to them? FEMA needs to know in the portal, need you to document and list all that. That is what's called your damage inventory. It'll be discussed during this scoping meeting kickoff for you to work on. This is something so you can already start on that. There's notes here on what you need for it. of importance is this last bullet, 30 days from that scoping meeting. So again, this is a meeting you're going to set, so it can't be 6 months from now. You know, it's going to be after your RPA, you know, it's going to happen within a couple of weeks. But from there, you have 30 days to complete your damage inventory, to identify all incident-related damages. On day 31, the portal will automatically lock down your damage inventory page. We have no control over that. That is built into the system. Not seeing it as a big problem. Again, everybody knows what their damage is. Everybody knows what they want to claim. Everybody should have a pretty good idea on the costs. You know, we need to estimate things up in the future. That's fine. But again, not a real make or break thing. Not something that's going to be hard to accomplish. Some terminology here for your reference that FEMA will have through it. A little bit more on your damage inventory. Things you need to pull together. You know, we'll talk about mitigation if we need to. That'll be added into there. So as I said, it's a very active program, as you've seen. You know, maybe by now you're already decided, like we talked at the beginning, that you are going to be delegating. That's fine. Make sure they attend one of these or see the brief online. But we need it to be, again, we need your, or at least somebody at your entity's undivided attention every now and then. Again, this isn't 24/7 type thing, but when we have meetings assigned to talk about projects and there's time constraints to be met within the portal, we need the active participation. When we're calling, you know, you may get calls from us, emails looking for information. FEMA may be requesting things from you. We need to make sure those things are being taken care of. And of course, if we have expectations, what can you expect from us? It's only fair. You can expect that we're going to be here. Again, your PEMA specialist is that person that's going to be with you from tonight on through to when the grant is finally closed out. They're going to be your go-to person. FEMA specialist is also there, that PDMG. They're here to help resolve problems, but that's mainly ours. As the administrator, we're here to make sure everybody plays well within the sandbox, things keep moving forward, and as your advocate, we're going to make sure that you get documented and receive every eligible cost, every penny you deserve under this program. And FEMA's pretty well on that too. Folks we have working here are used to working here, are well aware of the excellent applicants we have in Pennsylvania. A couple of review slides. Again, no funds until we get those DAP forms. If you have any old disasters, this does not include COVID. And there's still a few applicants out there in the counties that have open projects from past disasters. If that is the case, we got to make sure all of those documents are up to date, and we'll work with you on that here in the near future if any of you fall into that. I think we're okay though. We've gotten everything up to date lately, but your project specialist may be in touch if there is something. We can't move forward with new funds if we haven't taken care of the old funds. So here is who has who for your project specialist by county. Luzerne, Philly, you're already used to working with Kevin if you're in COVID. But these are the folks, are their telephone numbers to their desk, their email address. If you call, please leave a message. We don't return calls without messages. We just think they're spam. So leave us the message, who you are, your municipality or entity's name, in your county. And a little brief synapse of what you're calling for. That's turned into, when you leave a voice message, it's turned into a media file that is sent to Russ, John's, and Kevin's email. They're going to get back to you within a day, within that day, or the second day. Some other contact information for PEMA. Our 800 number. For some reason you're not getting reply from your project specialist, give our 800 number a call to our administrative assistant. They'll get you to me or someone else that can help you. Our website. Top right corner then is the recovery tab. Within the recovery tab then is public assistance tab with the drop downs for other information, forms library, things like that. Again, some reminder slides, what we need. Again, reoccurring themes. Documents that are going to require the applicant's agent's signature down the road. Again, some timelines for work completed, work to be completed. Communicating. Email addresses. If you have a generic one for your entity, please use that one with us. That way, as we know through the life cycle of this grant, which some may take a year or more to do, life happens. People leave their jobs for one reason or another, where we have people-specific emails with names and that person leaves or you leave. The line goes dead and takes us a little while to realize that, because that email may still stay active after you leave, and it's till we realize after a couple of tries the line's gone dead and we go hunting the alternate contact or DCD's website for another contact in your municipality or authority, but we find that a generic one works best. This is a public grant. Subject to Right to Know, Freedom of Information Act, and your internal record retention policy for that. PEMA's 7 years from the closeout of your project. The final slide. So give us a second here. I'm going to get a sip of coffee. We're going to switch over our screens here on our computer. We get into the chat room. Where we can, instead of having a little text box that we have up, and then we'll see what questions we have that Greg hasn't already got answered. Back to you shortly. Okay, so it looks like everything, questions we had during the presentation were taken care of. So we'll start closing out this presentation. Give you some time, if you have one then, to get it in. If not, you've got don't be bashful if you got one. But again, thank you for attending. Hopefully it was helpful for you, and I'm guessing the guys did a good job putting this together. Seeing we had very few questions, it was more on where are things at. Thank you for participating in the damage assessment process. Without your assistance in reporting your damages and participating in the assessment, the joint one when we came around with FEMA, we would not have received this declaration. If by chance you did not participate in that damage assessment, you did not report your damages at the beginning, you did not participate in the assessment, you are still eligible for this program, but we will not service you until we service get those that did participate, did report their damages, did participate in the damage assessment, did help secure this declaration. Once we have them into the system, portal and all starting, then we'll circle back around and take care of you. And that comes from our list from the county of those that reported their damages, and obviously from our visitation list, those days we were out doing the damage assessments. So I see nothing's come in. So again, when shortly beginning next week, we will get one of the recordings. We had 2, 4, 5 presentations for your group of counties. So we're going to take time, pick the best one, and put that recording out on our website. Slides will be out there too, or you can contact your county coordinator for them. Get yourself into the portal though, get your RPA in, get the process going, keep going on your work. And as always, be safe, be well, and we'll be talking to you later. Presentation is over, class dismissed, and Harrisburg out.